so much, Mpumelelo. No pressure on his side from me towards me, but I'd just like to echo our chairperson's welcoming comments and to thank everybody that has contributed to this event and who is here today. I, as CEO, need to report back on what we've been up to the last year, so a lot of the slides you will probably recognize. There are some new ones in there. And then at the end, I would like to kind of look at what the contribution might be beyond the numbers that we have now. So thank you very much and welcome to this event. I'll just touch on the background, the levy utilization, how the levy gets used. We try to measure ourselves and see how efficiently we are collecting the levy. Then we go into the numbers. And then at the end of that, we'll try and look into what's happening beyond the numbers. So as you well know, SACTA is a non-profit company. We are constituted with myself and Sandile as the employees, but we are governed by a board. The board has 2 members from SANSOR, 2 ministerial appointees, 2 members from Grain South Africa, and also a member from AgBiz, and then 1 or 2 others representing the oilseeds industry. Our main responsibility is to administer the statutory levy on certain self-pollinated crops. So this really goes around distributing the levy to the seed companies and also then the deployment of the transformation funds that Rake alluded to. Our financial year runs from the 1st of March to the 28th of February. So what I tried to do with this slide is just show that for every 100 Rand of levy that's collected, how is that deployed? And so the first piece is a commission that the levy or the statute of the levy makes provision for, and that is to pay the collectors of the levy, the people that actually collect the levy and pay them over to SANSOR. So out of every 100 Rand of levy collected, 2.50 Rand of that goes for that purpose, what we call the commission. SACTA's general administration costs vary from year to year, particularly on a percentage basis. So if we have a really big crop, then our percentage costs are obviously smaller. If the crop gets a bit lower and the levy collection is lower, then the percentage goes up. But it's in the order of 2.5% to just over 3%, say 3 Rand out of every 100 Rand. So about 5.50 Rand out of every 100 Rand is administration costs. Then the 20% that Rake alluded to that goes to transformation, that works out once we take off the commission first, and then the balance, that's 19.50 Rand in total. And Sandile will go into more detail around that, but more than 60% of that, or 11.70 Rand, gets devoted or deployed in enterprise development, about 3.50 Rand on skills development, and about 1 Rand on socio-economic development. And then the balance, which is also just over 3 Rand, is for managing those costs and so on. And everything that's left, which is around 75 Rands, gets distributed back to the seed companies and the technology holders for investment in their breeding and technology programs. And that's really the crux of how we are able to assist in the development of new varieties and new technologies that become available in the country. If we look just quickly over the crops and the different levy amounts, so wheat and barley, we started many years ago collecting 25 Rand a ton, and that has progressed. At the moment, we're collecting 34 Rand a ton for wheat and barley, and also for oats, and on lupins, we are collecting 35 Rands a ton in the current period. The reporting period that we're talking about at this meeting is the financial year ending February 25, and in that period, the soybean levy was 92 Rands a ton, and at the moment, currently, it's at 70 Rand a ton. If we look at our collection efficiency, as I say, we try and measure ourselves and make sure that we're doing a good job. But without digressing into too much detail, we make use of the SACTA's South African Grain Information System delivery volumes. So we know how much is getting delivered, and then against that we compare how much money we've collected. And if we divide the amount of money we've collected by the levy itself, we get a tonnage. And we can compare that tonnage, in other words, the tonnage on which we've collected a levy versus the tonnage that has been delivered but not necessarily sold. So we're kind of comparing apples and something that's close to an apple, not maybe a pear completely, but it's not a complete apple. And so we do get a little bit of fluctuation in the collection efficiencies. And you may say, well, we need to collect more than what we are doing. But I think the record shows there, for example, our last wheat collection was around 96%, barley 104%, which will say, how do you collect more than what was delivered? But what actually happens is that some of the crop gets delivered but not sold in a marketing year, and it's only sold in the next year. So we collect that money in the next year, and then that pushes the number up. So we can get more than 100%, and we generally get less than 100%, but more than 90 or 92%. And you can see the figures there. I think there's always room for improvement, and we continue to look to ways to do that. But I think if you look at a lot of the statutory levies, being able to collect in excess of 90% is envied by many of the folk out there. Then to look at the actual numbers for this is the history of SACTA. The red line shows the gross levy income over time. So you'll see in the previous financial year we collected, I can't see that far, I need to put my glasses on, around 246 million rands. And this year we're down in just below 200 million. So the main reason behind that was the reduction in the size of the soybean crop. In that 24 financial year, the soybean crop was in excess of 2.7 million tons. And in the current reporting year, the crop came in at just over 1.8 million tons. So that explains that to a large extent. And the other numbers are pretty much in line with what we've done up to now. If we actually look at our costs and so on, the graph on the right just shows the percentages. So the 2.5% is a flat line, and then the orange line that goes up and down, that reflects SACTA's admin costs as a percentage of the gross levy income. So it went up a little bit this year. The crop was a little bit smaller, as I explained. Last year it was down below right down near 2%, but that was because the crop was very big. In total, you can also see on the right-hand side that the commissions came down to around 4 million rands, but our actual costs have been a little bit higher this year. The reason for that is we've invested a considerable amount of what we can use in a monitoring and evaluation platform to track the progress of our supported farmers, and Sandile will explain a little bit more about that. That project is being run in conjunction with PFAP, and we're very, very happy with how it's progressing. There's some really nice information coming through, and this will enable us to deliver on our transformation mandate to a much greater degree than in the past. So the big numbers as well. What about our contribution to the seed companies? It's all spread out there. And it's all spread out there, and you can see in the past season on the wheat side or the winter crop side, we distributed a total of 62 million rands back to the winter cereal companies. Our last distribution on the soybean side was that big crop. It was a total of 142 million rand, 47 million rand that went back to the seed companies. So you can see in total for that last fiscal year that we can report on, over 200 million rand goes back into investment in breeding and technology. The current soybean distribution is coming up, And it looks as though that pool will be in the order of just over 100 million rand. So a little bit down on the previous year, but still a sizable amount of money. Now maybe to look at beyond the sort of basic numbers, and I think the story's been told by a number of people, but it's possibly worth repeating. One of the things that we can look at and get a number is on the number of varieties that have been registered. This is an incredibly difficult task to figure out because you have to look at the national variety listing, and that has, 270 odd soybean varieties on it over time. And you have to look at each variety and see, well, it came onto the market, it was registered on this year, but it got deregistered in this year, but another one came on in this year. So there's a whole lot of gains and losses that you have to monitor over the years. So what I've been able to determine is that in that first period there, June 22, there were 150 registered soybean varieties. And moving forward, new varieties came on the market, but others were deregistered and came off the market. So in essence, we have 130 odd new varieties since June 22. If we add the 130 to the 150, we should have 280 varieties, but in actual fact, we have around 223. So that gives an indication of how many have been removed. It's normally the older varieties that don't perform that well, and they're being replaced with newer varieties that have a higher yield. The graph on the right, I'm sure you've seen many times. It comes from BFAP, who I acknowledge here, but they did a study and they've been able to determine that on soybeans we are seeing a genetic yield gain of around 4% year on year the past 5 years. So that's an incredible testament to the seed companies and what they are doing with the funding that they are getting back through SACTA. And if we look at the same number on the wheat side, this is 2%. I'm going to show you some figures just now, which I think probably show that it's maybe a little bit more than that. This data is a little bit old, but it gives you the good impression of what's happening. I think one of the things on the soybean side that we don't always focus on is what it's done in terms of production areas. So in the old days, the greater part of the crop was produced in Mpumalanga in the east of the country. But over time, recent time, that has shifted, and now it's the Free State, the central dry part of the country, that is producing the biggest part of the crop. And I believe that has been made possible by the new varieties that are on the market that are better suited for those regions. And I think the other benefit that's more difficult to measure is that being able to introduce a legume into a crop rotation system actually improves the whole on-farm production process and productivity. So I think those are some of the things that we need to look at. And you can see the steady increase in production out of the Free State province there. If we switch to the winter wheat cereal story, the numbers of new varieties I know might vary a little bit with what Rake shared with us. As I did explain earlier, it's really difficult to track what's coming onto the market and what's going off the market. But anyway, we can very safely say that more than 50 varieties have come onto the market. And I think with wheat, it's a little bit more complicated because there are very strict quality requirements in bringing a new wheat variety to the market. And as you know, yield and quality tend to be inversely related. So it takes longer to get a high quality wheat variety with a high yield onto the market. Hence, it's taken a little bit longer. But I think it's also insightful to look at our just normal area and production figures. So the green bars there show the number of hectares and thousands that we produce in South Africa of wheat. And you can see the trend line is down. So over the last couple of years, we've been producing wheat on less and less area. But if you look at the production trend line, it's up. So that really indicates very much an increase in the general average yield that we're going. And the blue line now represents the yield per hectare, the average yield per hectare of those numbers. And you can see the trend line and the slope, which is quite sharp, 0.17, indicating a general yield increase in wheat. And again, I think these are the sort of long-term results of added investment into wheat breeding. Just very quickly on the barley and the other crops, barley areas have been going down and production, but you can see from that graph the production slope is a lot less than the decrease in area, so that also indicates a general increase in yield. And then on the oats and lupins, we've seen new varieties coming onto the market as well. I think that is shortly and sweetly the end of my story. More details are on our website. I'd really direct you to the website. There's a lot of cool information there, a lot of good videos. This event will also be posted on the website, and you can reach that at sactalevy.co.za. Then I'd also invite you, if you have any questions, please contact me via email or Sandile or Beatrix de Wit, who is the CEO of our administrators, AgriManage Solutions. In conclusion, just a snapshot of everything that SACTA's been up to and how the levies have worked over time. So you can see there that the first soybean levies were introduced in March 2019. They followed the first wheat, barley, and oats levies that came in October 2018. You can see the levies have been approved for 2 or 3 year periods. You can see on the soybean side, we've been doing 2 years up to now, but the current levy is a 3-year levy. The current wheat, barley, and oats levies are also 3 years, but they will be expiring at the end of next year. So we'll need to start looking at new applications in that regard. The lupin levy expires at the end of September, but we have a new lupin levy approved for the next 2 years, as you can see there as well. So that is my story. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I know you said that people can contact you via email and they can text them. But please don't answer like that. When they raise the question, don't say email me. We want an answer now. All right. Now, thank you for the presentation. I think my key takeouts is that the levies collections have actually been on the rise, which is a good thing. And the varieties we have been able to put out there have increased, which means it's good value for money. But it appears there's a challenge around the wheat. And I think it's a challenge that somehow it has to be resolved. But I don't want to preempt the questions. So we have a few minutes for anyone here to raise a question or to comment. And Andrew is here to answer. The 2 roving mics on the floor. Oh, there you go. Please, when you ask your question or you want to make a comment, just say your name, where you come from, and then raise your question.
Great. Can you hear me? I will start. My name is Ben Durham. I'm from the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. Thank you very much, Andrew. Fantastic talk. I just need to understand a little bit more, how does the genetic modification of soya muddy the waters with this levy process of an OPV variety? If you can just help that a little bit.
Yeah. If I understand correctly, how does the introduction or the presence of GMOs in the OPV muddy the water? So we actually have within the industry an agreement that a particular portion of the levy is devoted to technology, the levy pool goes to technology, and the other part goes to the genetics. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm more than happy to share those numbers around. The actual levy is based on 1.2% of the commodity price. So of that 1.2%, we say 0.25% of the 1.2, which in reality works out at just over 20% of the total pool. That goes to technology, and then just under 80%, or 0.95 of 1.2% goes into the genetics side. We do a market share calculation, which obviously we keep very confidential. The seed companies and the technology companies accept that, and we distribute the money according to that. Our distributions are reviewed and checked by our auditors to make sure that we don't make any glaring errors or anything like that. So, yeah.
Is that what you were asking? Are you answered? Okay, excellent. Next question. So in other words, the waters were not muddied.
Not yet.
The mud was watered.
Good morning, Andrew and everyone. Andrew, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to check the varieties that we have developed here for these various crops. How is the footprint in Africa in terms of how do we see them there in Africa and in other markets being used? Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm really not qualified to answer that question. How are the varieties that are developed in South Africa being used, or could they be used in the rest of Africa? As I say, that's really not for me to comment on, but I would imagine the seed companies would also be benefiting out of that funding in supporting their breeding programs. And many of the varieties that are suited in South Africa would probably be suitable elsewhere as well. Breeding is a global game these days, and you can talk to any of the seed companies here. They make use of germplasm from all around the world and incorporate it into our sort of germplasms that are suitable for South Africa. And out of those programs, they would also be testing in other parts as well. So, as I say, I'm sorry, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I'm sure the seed companies would approach you and explain how it works. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe put the question differently. Does SACTA have any collaborative arrangements with any African country?
No, we do not at all. I think we've received some interest from other countries to see if they could implement a similar system to SACTA to advance their programs in their countries. But SACTA is purely South African, governed by a South African law under the National Agricultural Marketing Council. So no.
Okay. Any other question? Yes? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation.
Yeah, so
I'm Andre de Toy from SA Seed, wheat breeder, basically. Just like to comment, not a question, basically, on the yields of wheat. See, congratulations, you are spot on the 2%. But you have to put that into context. If you look at the global trends of wheat increases, it's less than 1% per year. So if you look at countries like Canada, for instance, it's at 0.5%. So we are actually managing quite well in terms of our progress, and it's been being kept up for quite a number of years. It's not just 5. So, but thanks for that numbers.
thank you for that explanation.
All right. Do you want to comment?
No, not at all. I think Andre is the better person to talk about wheat breeding. He's the expert, and one can absolutely rely on what he says. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Andre. Any question at the back? Please give me a mark. Right. Why are you outside the plane? We are inside here.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Toitsilo from the ARC. Maybe I should first answer the question
before
why I'm
you ask,
outside.
why are you outside?
Yes, I want to answer that first before I make my comment. I arrived 2 minutes late because I was on a virtual meeting with the CIMIT colleagues that are here in Pretoria. Actually, they're in South Africa, and they were discussing about collaborations. And then I think one of the points touches on what was being said here. Their interest is to, is to collaborate with South African institutions and make sure that some of the cultivars or technologies that is developed in South Africa can benefit most of the countries in the region. And probably that will go to the issue of SACTA. My interest here is about assisting all the other countries to implement the same model. Remember again, this model is not only, in as much as we applied in South Africa, it originated from a few of the colleagues who went to Australia and studied about the model of how to fund the self-pollinated crops. And they found that it was very good, and I think most of them are in the audience here. And so my question is about the sustainability of this funding. Is it something that the industry will support for as long as the cultivars are released? Because I'm thinking that, you know, it's the benefits that all these companies are getting out of this additional funding is actually impacting on our food security, and we're starting to see more and more interest coming out of the companies that are coming, both locally and as well as internationally. So, is there any indication that this is going to stay with us longer? Yeah. What are the challenges that it might disappear?
All right.
Thank you for the question. I think I got most of that. And again, I'm going to kind of, how can I say, I think the system that we have employed in South Africa is great. One, because of its simplicity, and two, because of its very cheap costs, if I can put it that way. So as I explained earlier, around 5 Rand in every 100 Rand is used for the administration, and the rest goes to the beneficiaries. I don't think any of the systems elsewhere in the world are running at those kind of levels. So in terms of efficiency or cost, we're really pretty good. There are some questions about how accurate we are, and I think some of the calculations, some of the accuracy, the data that gets reported could be improved on a little bit. But it's kind of like the yield and quality inverse relationship. The more accurate your data requirement, the more it costs you. So there has to be a playoff between, are you going to accept maybe data that's not 100% accurate, but gives you a good sort of ballpark figure and you don't pay too much for it? Or if you want really accurate market share data, you're going to have to pay for it, and the pool will be that much smaller and there'll be less to invest in the breeding programs. So those are the things we kind of look at. I think what's good about the South African system and the statutory levy is that you have to make an application. The levy is not forever. So I think a levy can be made for up to 2 years. One can apply for 4 years. And we've kind of landed on the 3-year kind of space. And so every 3 years, this gives the participants, the stakeholders in the levy, the opportunity to decide whether they want to continue with it or whether they don't want to continue with it. So there's a continual review of whether the levy should continue or not. SACTA, as I say, we're only administrators. We do what we get told to do. The important stakeholders in that negotiation are the producers and the seed companies. And they determine every couple of years whether the levy should go on or not. So in terms of sustainability, I can't give you the full answer. I'm confident that the levies will be here for some time to come, but it is an issue and an application that gets reviewed every couple of years. Hope that's a suitable answer. A bit long.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. And that brings us to the end, to the question and answer session. But Andrew is here with us the whole day. Those who want to interact with him in person, feel free to approach him. He's already shared his email address if you want to send an email. But it appears to me, for as long as people see value, there will be no reason why the model cannot continue. Any model is self-sustaining if it can continuously regenerate and reproduce value. So yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Please give Andrew a round of applause for the presentation.